Let me just kind of start with a question, like what does the idea of holiness bring to mind for you? When you think of holiness, or when you think about the reality of a holy God, right? We've heard that God is holy. What does that make you think of when you think of holiness? And typically we think of moral purity, right? We think of morality when we talk about holiness. We think about things that we can't do. We can't do them because the fundamentalist preacher who's wearing a suit and waving a big King James Bible says we can't do it. And he's talking about holiness, and what he means is, fornication. And he's talking about, all these things we can't do, the evil things like dancing and drinking beer. And that's about what we think about when we think of holiness. And then a holy God, that's the part about God that doesn't really like us. Right, that's the part about God that he doesn't like us. We should be afraid of him because he's holy, and thank God he's calmed down a little bit in the New Testament, and now he's kind of chilled out. Like the Old Testament God was really harsh and stuck in his ways, but then in his old age, he just kind of, like a nice grandpa, just kind of, chilled out a little bit, and now he's got a softer side to him, and now we can speak of a God of love because he's not so rigid anymore. And that's the way in which we think about holiness, that holiness is where all the fun stops, and a holy God is the one who blows the whistle. He blows the whistle when we try to have too much fun, but that is not holiness at all. Holiness is not pursed-lipped prudes, right? All morose and melancholy and no fun at all. The holy God of the universe did not speak the galaxies into existence and form the oceans by his very word and do all that he did so that you wouldn't dance or drink beer. That's not why he did what he did, right? It's not to keep you from Michelob Ultra, which isn't beer anyways, okay? That's like the purgatory of beer. It's not even real beer. So even if that was forbidden, I think it would be okay. That's not why God did what he did. God flung the stars into the sky. He's painted the Texas sunset so that we would worship him. So we would marvel at him, right? That we would be awakened to what the psalmist calls the splendor of his holiness. But holiness is not mere moral purity. It's not just that. It is the very essence of who God is. In all of God's ways, he is holy. So his love is a holy love. And his justice is a holy justice. And his mercy is a holy mercy. It's not that God is holy because he doesn't sin. He doesn't sin because God is holy. Everything else emanates from the holiness of God. And that's really important because that's going to translate later in the series for us in regards to our holiness. We don't become holy when we don't sin. It is precisely because he made us holy that we should not sin. Right? Holiness comes first, and then we don't sin. And then we pursue a certain way of behaving. So then, what does it mean to be holy if it's not just moral purity, but something more? Well, the word holy in the Hebrew, it comes from an ancient word, I'll pronounce it, but it's wrong, kedusha, okay? Kedusha, and it means to cut off or to separate. Right, so to be holy, it's to set apart, to be separate from, to be distinct. Probably the best word is just to be other, right? Other. And so God then being holy, it means that he's other, he's separate, he's distinct. Or we talk about a holiday, literally a holy day. It's a day set apart from all the other days. We talk about, God on the seventh day of creation, he set apart the seventh day and made it holy. The Sabbath is a day set apart from all the other days in the week. Right? God is holy. He is set apart. He is completely and wholly separate from his creation. That's the art there. Right? God is different than his creation. He is other. He is distinct. He is unique. There is God, and then there is everything else. That is the holiness of God. And so God's holiness then it's metaphysical before it's ethical. It's about him first and who he is before it's how he behaves. That's the holiness of God. Jackie Hill Perry, she says this. She says, I know that holy comes with a world of baggage. We think of it and imagine boredom incarnated, a smileless woman, an uptight man who looks as if he's never loved anything at all. Distant, cold, knowledgeable of the scriptures, but ignorant of the heart. Whether it is joyless or callous, neither describes God. God's holiness is essential to his nature and fundamental to his being. His holiness is what makes him good and loving and kind and faithful. Without holiness, God wouldn't be beautiful. And so because of it, he is eternally attractive. And so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna behold the holiness of God. We're gonna behold God, right? In all of his beauty and all of his many perfections, we're gonna awe in who he is, wonder at his otherness, right? He's different, he's separate, he's set apart, and we're gonna worship him and behold him, and in so doing, we begin to walk in holiness ourselves. So Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. We see in verse 1 this famous verse, famous text, famous story of the Bible, where it says, in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah says, I saw the Lord. The king has died, and Isaiah goes to the temple, right, to seek God, to go to God, and he is given a vision in the temple. King Uzziah, he had ruled for a long time, and for the most part, Israel prospered during his time, during his rule. But the king died, and so the people are worried. What if the new king doesn't bring the same prosperity and peace, right? What if the new king doesn't allow for the nation to flourish? What if the new president brings division and not peace? What if the inflation soars and the economy tanks? The people of God are worried because King Uzziah has died. We're seeing some of that with the Queen's passing, right? The only queen in the UK that we've ever known, most of us, I suppose, ever known in our lifetime. And now the question is, what is the new king gonna be like? That's what they're facing. And Uzziah, if you read in 2 Chronicles 26, he was a stud, right? At 16, he became king. And it says that he had set his mind, his heart on the Lord. And so for a while, there was prosperity in Israel and among God's people. It says that he made war with the Philistines, that he built towers to fortify Jerusalem, and he had herds of cattle and vineyards and farmers, and he commanded a huge army, and everything he did succeeded. It even says that he made machines invented by skillful men to be on the towers and the corners of the city to shoot arrows and great stones. Like brother, invented, transformers and was protecting his people. Right, so everything he did was going well and prospering, but then listen to this, 2 Chronicles 26 verse 15. And his fame spread far, for he was marvelously helped until he was strong. But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction, for he was unfaithful to the Lord his God. Uzziah lost sight of a holy God. The distance between him and God got too short, and he got too strong. He wasn't in awe of God anymore. Now, God wasn't the famous one, he was famous. God wasn't the powerful one, he was powerful. God wasn't the other, he was the one set apart and unique. And then, verse 1, he died. Death is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how powerful you are, how great you think you are, how famous you think you are, how rich you think you are, how beautiful you think you are, you're going to die, right? Everyone's going to die. Welcome to the Paradox Church. You're dead. You're gonna die. Everyone dies. And it's this great equalizer. It doesn't matter how great you think you are, one day you end up back in the dirt. Right? And some people don't believe what Genesis 1 teaches, that God formed Adam out of the dirt, right? Breathed life into him. Some people don't believe that, but what we all believe is that every one of us, no matter who we are, will one day breathe out our last and end up back in the dirt. That is just a reality to us as humanity. We are not holy, we are not other, only God is. And so Isaiah has this vision in the temple. Verse 1, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne. It is God who rules and reigns. It's God who administrates, God who governs. It is he who is over all things. And he was high and lifted up, right? He is separate, he is different, he is unique, he is holy. Isaiah has this spatial and spiritual awareness of the distinctiveness of God. It's God that is higher. He's different. He's not like us, right? He's lifted up on a throne. He's not literally up, right? This is symbolic. He's saying he's just set apart from us. And it's meant to lift our gaze. It's like the steeple at our new building. Your gaze is lifted, that God is higher, God is different, God is bigger, God is holy. And this is the best news in the world, that God is God and we are not. That is good news. Right? That is good news. This is some of the best news you could hear. You are not God. That the world does not depend on you. The weight of the world is not on you, that you do not have to have control over everything, that you don't have to be everything, fix everything, that is not being asked of you. Right, take a deep breath, breathe out fears and anxieties. God is God. He is high and lifted up. He is holy. God's God and we are not. He's the Holy One. And then verse 2, above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings, with 2 covering his face, 2 covering his feet. With 2 he flew. These are kind of scary to me, okay? Like I don't like Charlie and Char Factory. I don't like that stuff. I don't like what is it? Who's the gal that I don't know. Any of those kind of movies I don't like. I blocked it out. These things are flying around. 2 of them, two wings are covering their eyes. You can't see God, right? Looking at God is like looking straight at the sun. 2 are covering their feet. With 2, they fly, and they're singing antiphonally. It's call and response. It's like a gospel song, right? They're singing to each other. They can't help it. Holy, holy, holy. They can't help singing to one another. It's this like constant singing out of the holiness of God. In fact, let's try it. We've got this section down here, you're 1, that section like in the middle 2, and then the balcony up there. We're gonna sing holy, 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 right? It's gonna be awesome. Ready? Go. Holy, holy, holy. Okay, let's sing it though, okay? Let's not chant it. Let's sing it. I can't sing. What's the holy, that one? Okay, ready? Yeah, let's go. They're singing, right? They're singing back and forth to one another, holy, holy, holy. And then I love this, the whole earth is full of his glory. I love this because typically when we think of the holiness of God, we just think of his transcendence, which is good, right? That's right and good. He is holy. He is unique, set apart, high and lifted up. But also the whole earth is full of his glory. That this holy God is not just transcendent, but he draws near. Right, that his holiness doesn't just stay up in heaven, but actually comes near to us. It draws near to us, and the whole earth then is filled with his glory. Like, this is what I want you to hear this, and it's gonna make more sense as we go along in the series, but in God's holiness, he wants to draw near to you. That isn't the part of God that wants to stay separate from you. It is the very part of God that wants to draw near to his people, the holiness of God. That God delights to be with us. He is Father, Son, and Spirit. And so inherent within God is a self-disclosing, sharing invitation to take part in who he is, to know and love him as he knows and loves us. Or you could read the whole Bible as a story of drama and redemption where a holy God makes a way to be with an unholy people. The holy God wants to draw near. The Habakkuk 2, it's God's vision for the world in Habakkuk 2, where it says that the knowledge of the glory of God would fill the earth as the waters cover the seas. That's what he wants for us. Like scientists tell us the universe is constantly expanding, the earth is constantly and continuously exploding with the glory of God, and God's will and God's work is to bring heaven to earth. That's what the temple is gonna be when we study it. That's what Jesus is doing when he comes. This is God wanting to be with his people, and the Bible ends in Revelation 21 and 22 with this temple, a holy city coming down from heaven to earth. God wants to dwell with his people. God in his holiness delights to draw near to us. I was talking with a brother last week, and he's been through like legit trauma. right? Legit trauma. And he just started going to Christian counseling. It was legit Christian counseling. It wasn't just some counseling with a couple Bible verses thrown on him. This is, gospel-centered therapy, okay? And so he was telling me about just how he met with the counselor for the first time, and how the guy was telling him, like, you can't just go to what you know about God in the midst of your trauma. It can't just be theology, right? It can't just be going to what you know in your head. Part of you is still 8 years old. You need to sit in that trauma and sit in that hurt and sit in it with God, right? With him. We don't just know about God, we need to be with God. And so he's telling me this, and like, for whatever reason, I just came to tears, like thinking of the holy God of the universe, right? The Holy One of the universe, who is unique and high and lifted up and transcendent, who would want to draw near to his son like a father and just sit with him. To sit with him in his trauma, to sit with him in his hurt, and just to say, like, I'm here, like it's gonna be okay. I'm holy. I'm not like them, I will not leave you. I'm holy, I'm not like them, I will not hurt you. I cannot fail you, I will not sin against you. I'm holy, I can't. It's gonna be okay, I'm here. Like, just to think that the holy God of the universe delights to draw near to us. Delights to draw near. The good news of the Christianity is that the holy God of the universe makes a way to be with an unholy people. Now, God is holy. They sing holy, holy, holy. Right? He's 3 times holy. The angels, they're emphasizing God's holiness. They're not singing about the love of God. They're not singing about the mercy of God, or the justice of God, or the judgments of God. They're singing of the holiness of God 3 times over. They're emphasizing the holiness of God. And so what then is the holiness of God? Just like last week, I'm sorry, y'all, I got 3 points, okay? 3 points, told you that's what preachers do. In fact, they all start with the letter I, okay? You're welcome, can't teach this. 1, he is holy, 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 which means God is incomparable. He's incomparable. Isaiah 40, verse 18, to whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compare with him? Again, in verse 25, to whom then will you compare me, that I should be like him, says the Holy One? Or chapter 46, verse 5, to whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be alike? God is saying, there is no other God like me. Right? God is incomparable. He is the only true God. He is the holy God. He alone is other. He alone is unique. Allah is not like God. Allah is not like the Father, Son, and Spirit, for Allah is alone. He is a single person God with no one to love unless he creates. All right, Allah is dependent on his creation to be anything that we would want him or need him to be. Allah offers paradise, but says that he won't be there himself. He is alone in heaven with his eternal word next to him. It's a book called the Quran, and he gives it to his people, which is nice, but when our God gives us his word, it's not a book, but his son. And our God gives us paradise, but his paradise is heaven on earth with him. Our God is not like Allah. Allah is nothing like our God. There is no other God like him. Not Marduk, the Babylonian god who was said to have created humans so that we could be his slaves. Not the Greek gods who are always just fighting each other, and creation is just this result of a large war and conflict, like 4 brothers wrestling in a living room. It's just this chaotic mess that occurs. That's nothing like our God. Not Buddha, not the Mormon God. None of these gods compare to the God of the Bible. Our God is holy, because our God is Trinity, eternally Father, Son, and Spirit. Every other religion rejects the Trinity, but nothing in the world makes sense unless there's a Trinity. How could God be a God of love if there was a time before creation that he did not love? How could God be a God of love if there was a time when he had no one to love, and yet he is eternally a loving Father to a beloved Son? And so community makes sense, friendship makes sense, marriage makes sense with this relational God. Justice makes sense because there's a way in which the Father, Son, and Spirit relate with one another, right? There's a relationship between them, and their interrelationship of mutual love and honor, C.S. Lewis calls it the dance of God, makes justice makes sense. Right? We want the world to revolve around us, but God is in a relationship where eternally they've revolved around one another. Diversity and unity makes sense, for God is three in one. The holiness of God is not stale or self-righteous or prudish or any of those things. The holiness of God is self-giving, generous, joy-filled, beautiful. That's the holiness of God. Right? There's no other God like him. He is incomparable. I love this one. Number 2, he is holy, 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 which means God is the only true independent one. He's the only true independent one. Psalm 50, this is just great. For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world and its fullness are mine. That God does not need us. Acts 17. The Apostle Paul, he says, the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life, breath, and anything. Right? God is holy, which means he is dependent on no one. He is interdependent for nothing. He is codependent with no body. He is completely independent of his creation. He is utterly free, cut off from any need, any desire. He is lacking for nothing and no one. Right? This is the acidity of God. That's what theologians call it, the acidity of God. And it means he has absolute sufficiency and complete autonomy. This means God does not need a mother to birth him. He needs no food to sustain him. There is no air for him to breathe, for he himself gives life, breath, and everything to everyone. He is never lonely. He does not need rest. He is not limited at all in any way by anything. There is nothing that can hinder him. God is God in the fullness of himself all of the time and without any help. He has no beginning. He will have no end. He does not change, but is the same God yesterday that he is today, that he will be for you tomorrow. He has no limits. He needs no sleep. His purposes are never thwarted. Nothing can ever happen to God. He's not like us at all. He's not like us at all. In our culture of self, like this religion of self that is the American way these days, and please learn to discern when that's being taught to you, when the air that you're breathing is this religion of self and not a gospel exhale of the person and work of Jesus. But in this kind of culture of self, we are trying to be completely independent and autonomous. We're trying to be God. We no longer consider ourselves in relation to our nature as finite, limited human beings that are dependent on God and others, that are dependent on things according to our nature, bound to our nature, sleep and rest, and bound to our nature with a gender and a physical body. We're needy and vulnerable. We need God. Now we speak in the language of self. We speak in the language of self. And the self is simply an internal core of intuitions. It's kind of the story that we think about ourselves. It's our biography and our gender and our race and our, most importantly, our life experiences. And they come together in this kind of single center of self-consciousness. And we are what we say we are, and we are what we feel. That is a futile attempt to be independent, separate, cut off, holy. But we are not like God, and he is not like us. Numbers 23:19. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should change his mind. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? God is not like us. Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. God is not like us. He is the only true independent one. 3, God is holy, 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 which means he is incomprehensible. Theologians, they love to use this word incomprehensible. I think just it's so that they can kind of cover their butt when they say that they don't know, right? They don't know. They don't know. He's incomprehensible. We don't know. it's talking about how we cannot fully comprehend God. Right, that God's holiness, his otherness is something so great, so much that it's hard for us to comprehend. We can't apprehend the fullness of who God is. And so this should make us both tremble and rejoice at the same time. The illustration I always use is like we're standing on the cliff at sunset over the ocean, and we don't want to fall in, but it's so beautiful we don't want to move. We tremble and we rejoice at the bigness and awesomeness of God. He's incomprehensible. It's just so beautiful. In fact, did you know that it's God's beauty that makes him holy? It's God's beauty that makes him holy. Psalm 96:9, worship the Lord in the splendor, the beauty of his holiness. Tremble before him, all the earth. Psalm 27:4, one thing I've asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I would dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life to what? Gaze upon his beauty. Psalm 52, out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, God shines forth. To paraphrase Augustine, religious people find God useful, Christians find God, the beauty of God is the holiness of God. And yet here's the problem. We've reduced God's holiness down just to moral purity, right? Which, and we'll get into this, I think, so that we can create kind of a list of rules to hopefully try to follow as best as we can. And then, we kind of feel better about ourselves. It's black and white. Like that's how Christians, especially in the West, like to live. And we've kind of reduced that. But when we reduce God's holiness just to moral purity, we lose the beauty of God. We lose who he is. We just talk about what he does or doesn't want us to do. We lose the otherness of God and we stop wondering. We're not in awe anymore. Now, this is actually, in part, I think our fault, right? Pastors, preachers, it's our fault because most of what we give you is, 5 steps to, what to do when you're anxious. And we don't talk about a huge and holy God who wants to draw near to you. You don't hear about that. And so you think God is comprehensible. We think that God is attainable. He's understandable. We've heard it already. What else you got, Pastor? We've already heard this before. So we're not surprised and we're not in awe and we don't wonder, and I've said this for years, but comparison and celebrity become our cheap alternative to being in awe of God. So some of what plagues us as a culture is because preachers and churchgoers have forgotten that God is beautiful, that we can't comprehend him. We're in this celebrity crazy culture where the famous are our prophets, the influencers are our evangelists, and we wonder at them. And we're so impressed with one another because we're not impressed with God. And so body image issues, an unhealthy comparing of yourself with one another, fear of man, fear of failure, all of that is because we don't fear God. We don't take part in, we don't awe in the beauty of God. And because we're not in awe of God, we're in awe of Taylor Swift or whoever, right? Because we're not in awe of God. Yet it is God who is holy. It is God who is incomprehensible. It is God who is beautiful. We should wonder at God. What do we do with this? Let's finish up. Look at verse 6. Or rather, verse 5. How do we respond to a holy, holy, holy God? Isaiah's response is ours. He says, and I said, woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Isaiah is undone. Like his response is our response, and here's what his response is. He is wrecked. Right? He is wrecked. He sees the holiness of God, the otherness of God, and he is torn apart. He's ruined. He sees the perfections of God in all of his ways, in the splendor of his holiness, and he doesn't even feel worthy to worship. His lips are unclean, and he recognizes that his community is in the same place, that he dwells with a bunch of people. He's rolling with a bunch of people that also are not worthy to even worship this God who is so great. Right? We are unclean and God shines forth. We are sinners, but God is perfect in all of his ways. We are finite and limited. We can barely keep our room clean, but God is the incomprehensible, beautiful one. And so we can't even worship. He doesn't feel worthy to say anything about the greatness of God. But then verse 6, then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth and said, behold, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. This was Isaiah's hope. The angel, he takes the sacrifice from the altar. Something holy was sacrificed for what is unholy. Something that was holy and blameless and without blemish was sacrificed for that which is unholy. Bound up in the perfections of a holy God, bound up in the perfections of the Father, Son, and Spirit is a holy love, a holy justice, and a holy mercy. And this holy desire to draw near to his people and to make them holy even when they are unholy, to be with them. And so in the same way, the Father will send his holy Son to be a sacrifice for his unholy people, to atone for the sins of his people. And then the Son will send his Spirit, his Holy Spirit, to make his people walk in holiness and to walk with God. Because that which was holy sacrificed itself for that which is unholy. Religious people, they find God useful. Christians find God beautiful. In the same way, or in a similar way, all the other gods want slaves, but the holy God of the Bible wants sons. And so the Holy Son was sacrificed, that you would be made a son, a daughter, and that you would be then set apart to be with him. The holiness of God, it should be something that strikes awe and wonder and fear in our hearts. And apart from Jesus, apart from that sacrifice, absolutely should make us tremble. Cover our eyes, cover our lips, unworthy to worship him. But in the Son, in the sacrifice, we have been made sons. The holiness of God is what bounds up all his other attributes and makes them something we can actually trust and hope in. His love is holy love. It will not fail. His justice is holy justice. Your abusers, your oppressors, those that have hurt you will not get away with it. And his mercy is holy mercy. But it's only in the Son, it's only in Jesus that is good news for us.